The scent of another man's cologne lingered in the air, faint but undeniable. It clung to her clothes, her hair, even the sheets of our bed. I tried to ignore it at first. A salesman must have brushed past her at work. A male co-worker stood too close. Maybe the store's new inventory carried a different scent. I told myself all of this, convincing myself that it was nothing. That she was still the woman I had trusted for the past 7 years. But Brianna had changed. It wasn't just the late nights or the sudden enthusiasm for her job. It was the way she pulled away when I reached for her, the way she laughed at texts she never shared. She used to tell me everything, small things, silly things. Now, there was an invisible wall between us, and I had no idea when it had been built. At first, I let it go. Every man is afraid of looking paranoid. No one wants to be that guy, the one who interrogates his wife about every minute of her day. But the little things added up. The first time she came home late, she had an excuse. A wealthy client needed help picking out a wardrobe, and they'd spent hours going through designer collections. She was exhausted but glowing, flushed with the thrill of high-end retail. I asked about the client, and her response was breezy, vague. The second time, it was an after-hours inventory check. The store had received a new shipment of exclusive pieces, and as the senior saleswoman, she needed to oversee everything. The third time, she simply said, "Work ran late." I tried to believe her. But the scent of that cologne followed her home each time. I started watching her more closely. The way she dressed had changed. Tighter skirts. Lower necklines. Not obvious enough to accuse her of anything, but different. More deliberate. She took longer to get ready in the mornings, even on days when she had no plans but work. Her phone was suddenly a constant presence, face down on the counter, guarded like a secret. And then there was the boutique itself. One afternoon, when my own shift ended early, I decided to stop by. I told myself it was innocent. A quick surprise visit to take my wife to dinner, maybe remind her that I was still here, that I was still her husband. The boutique was pristine, elegant. Floor-to-ceiling mirrors, gold accents, racks of overpriced clothes that smelled like wealth. Brianna was behind the register, laughing at something. A man stood in front of her, holding a designer suit. He was tall, well-dressed, clearly a customer. But the way Brianna's hand lingered on his wrist as she gestured toward the dressing rooms made my stomach tighten. She looked up, saw me, and for the briefest second, something flickered across her face. Not guilt. Not fear. Annoyance. The moment passed quickly, replaced by the smile she always gave me, but I had seen it. Felt it. She introduced me as her husband, voice light, pleasant, the same way she might introduce a coworker. The man barely acknowledged me. I left with her that evening, brushing off the uncomfortable feeling in my gut. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was reading too much into a moment. She worked in sales. Flirting, making clients feel special, that was part of the job. That's what I told myself. Until it started happening more often. Over the next few weeks, she came home later and later. Sometimes she had explanations, sometimes she didn't. I stopped asking. Each excuse sounded rehearsed, and I was tired of being treated like a fool. One night, she stumbled into bed well past midnight, the faint smell of expensive cologne still clinging to her skin. I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't insecurity. It was the truth, creeping in through the cracks she had left behind. I just needed to find proof. The feeling of betrayal doesn't come all at once. It seeps in slowly, poisoning everything. The way she kissed me felt different. The way she spoke, the way she laughed, it was all a performance. I started watching her closely. The routine became predictable. Brianna left early, dressed a little too well for a sales job. If she wore perfume, it was subtle, but by the time she came home, there was always something else mixed in, something deeper, muskier. A scent that didn't belong to me. I didn't want to believe it. But she was making it impossible. She was texting constantly, fingers gliding over the screen with ease. If I walked by, the phone flipped over. Once, when she went to the shower, I tried to check, but she had a new passcode. That was when I knew. The woman I had married, the one who used to tell me about every little thing, who used to laugh and hand me her phone without a second thought, was gone. Still, there was no proof. I had followed her twice. Nothing. She worked, stayed late, and then came straight home. But something was happening. And it was happening inside the store. One night, she forgot her work laptop at home. The moment she realized it, she panicked. It was nearly 10 p.m., and she had been exhausted a minute earlier, but suddenly, she was wide awake, grabbing her keys, rushing out the door. I told her I'd drive. Her hesitation lasted barely a second, but I caught it. Then she smiled, that fake, practiced smile, and agreed. At the store, the place was empty, lights dimmed except for the back offices. As she hurried inside, I followed. She glanced over her shoulder, clearly wanting me to stay by the entrance, but I kept walking. The back office was a sleek, glass-walled space filled with designer bags and high-end accessories. As she booted up her laptop, I accidentally knocked over a rack of handbags, sending them clattering to the floor. She turned in irritation, already snapping at me to be careful, and in that moment of distraction, I slipped 2 small wireless cameras onto the shelves. By the time she turned back, I was already gathering the fallen bags, apologizing. She rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath, grabbing her laptop before hurrying me out. The moment we got home, she was different. Distracted. Quiet. I watched her sit at the dining table, staring at her screen, fingers unmoving. Whatever she had been so desperate to retrieve, it suddenly didn't matter anymore. Something had changed. And I was about to find out what. That night, long after she fell asleep, I lay in bed, staring at my phone, heart pounding. The cameras were live. And I was about to learn the truth. The first few hours were uneventful. The boutique was empty, the only movement coming from the security lights flickering on and off. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe this was all just. Then she appeared. Brianna walked into the office, moving with the casual confidence of someone who thought no one was watching. She sat at her desk, checking her phone, smoothing her hair. A few minutes later, she stood up, straightened her dress, and adjusted the buttons. The door opened. Daniel Whitmore. The store's owner. Rich. Married. Handsome in a way that men like me couldn't compete with, men who worked regular jobs, who lived average lives. My grip on the phone tightened as I watched them. He said something that made her laugh, and then she closed the office door. Locked it. I already knew what was coming, but still, I couldn't look away. She leaned against the desk as he moved toward her, his hands on her waist, his lips on her neck. Her head tilted back, eyes fluttering shut, body melting into his. She wasn't hesitant. She wasn't reluctant. She wanted this. The intimacy began, right there in the office where she worked, where she spent all those late nights. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out every rational thought. I felt sick. Hot. Cold. Everything at once. This was my wife. The woman who had promised forever. The woman who came home to me every night, pretending to be tired, pretending to be stressed from work, while another man's scent still clung to her skin. The anger was immediate, but it was quickly replaced by something else. A plan. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't throw accusations at her, giving her the chance to spin more lies, to cry and manipulate. I was going to destroy her. And I was going to take him down with her. That night, as she slept beside me, peaceful, unaware, I got to work. The video footage was already on my phone. But that wasn't enough. I went through the recordings, saving every moment, every angle. Then, I backed them up onto multiple devices. A USB. A hidden folder on my laptop. A cloud account under a fake name. They weren't just cheating. They were comfortable doing it. Confident. Reckless. And now, the whole world was going to see it. By morning, I had uploaded the footage anonymously to multiple platforms. Social media. Private forums. And most importantly, straight to the inbox of Daniel's wife. Then I sat back and waited. By noon, the internet was on fire. I watched from my desk as the footage spread like a virus. It started on a gossip forum, then jumped to social media. A scandal of this magnitude, an elite boutique owner caught being unfaithful with a married employee, was the kind of filth that people loved to devour. It didn't take long for the comments to explode. Who is she? OMG, this is the owner of Whitmore Lux. His wife is a major investor. Wow, she really thought she wouldn't get caught. Someone tag his wife. She needs to see this. And then the inevitable happened. Daniel's wife, Elizabeth Whitmore, posted a public statement just hours later. Short. Cold. Devastating. Effective immediately, Daniel Whitmore has been removed from all business operations of Whitmore Lux. Divorce proceedings are underway. The store will undergo restructuring. It was over. The boutique, the one Brianna had fought so hard to be part of, the one she had sacrificed our marriage for, was crumbling. When Brianna came home that night, she looked like a ghost. She was shaking, phone in hand, scrolling through message after message. Her lips parted as if to speak, but nothing came out. She staggered to the kitchen, gripping the counter like she might collapse. I sat at the dining table, silent, watching her drown in her own disgrace. She finally turned, wide-eyed, breath shallow. Someone had leaked the footage. Someone had exposed her. She didn't know it was me. Not yet. She begged me to believe that it wasn't what it looked like. She spun a story, a desperate, crumbling excuse. She swore she had been manipulated. She claimed Daniel had forced her into it, that she was just keeping her job, that she never meant to hurt me. But I had seen everything. The way she wanted him. The way she reached for him. The lies didn't work anymore. I slid the divorce papers across the table, my expression unreadable. Her face twisted with realization. Then, fury. She wasn't sorry. She was caught. She threatened me. Said I would regret this. That I was ruining her life. But her life was already ruined. Daniel was finished. His business in shambles. His name tarnished. His wife had taken everything from him in a matter of hours. And Brianna? She was just collateral damage. Her job, gone. Her reputation, obliterated. Her perfect, selfish little world, turned to dust. I didn't say a word. As she sobbed, screamed, pleaded, I just stood up, grabbed my keys, and walked out. I never looked back. The silence of my new apartment was almost unsettling. After years of marriage, of shared routines and empty conversations, the sudden quiet felt foreign. But it was a good silence. A cleansing one. Brianna tried to fight the divorce. At first, she played the victim. She told friends and family that I was cruel, that I was punishing her over a misunderstanding. But the internet never forgets. The footage had done its job. Everyone knew. She lost more than just her job. She lost the respect of the people around her. Her parents stopped speaking to her. Her friends, many of whom had been married women, wanted nothing to do with her. And me? I walked away with everything. The video ensured an ironclad case of infidelity. She got nothing in the divorce. Not the house. Not a dime of my savings. She tried to fight for spousal support, sobbing to the judge about how she had sacrificed so much for our marriage. But the court saw through her act. She walked out of the courthouse with nothing but her name. Meanwhile, Daniel was fighting a war of his own. Elizabeth Whitmore was ruthless. She took him for everything. The boutique, the very place where he and Brianna had betrayed their spouses, was shut down. The high-end brand that once carried his name had erased him completely. I watched from a distance as their worlds collapsed. And I moved on. I rebuilt my life, one day at a time. Got a new place. Focused on work. Hit the gym harder than ever. Found new hobbies, things that had nothing to do with the marriage that had suffocated me for years. Then, one evening, months later, I got a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry." I stared at the screen, expressionless. Brianna. The message sat there, unanswered. She was sorry. Sorry she lost everything. Sorry her choices had consequences. Sorry she no longer had a cushy life to fall back on. But she wasn't sorry for what she did. She was only sorry that she got caught. I deleted the message without responding. The past was dead. And I was finally, truly free.